All right, section 1.1, we're going to talk about the coordinate plane, and we're going to talk about distance and midpoint, okay? Distance and midpoint are two formulas that you guys will be using. You'll need to memorize them. You won't have them, and we will not be using calculators. It's very important that you guys understand that. But when we talk about the coordinate plane, if you guys are fully well aware of this, that's wonderful. If you're sitting here going, oh, I kind of don't remember everything, that's okay too. Let's talk about it. All right, our coordinate plane is made up of our x and y axis. The x-axis is the horizontal one that goes left and right. The y-axis is the vertical one, the one that goes up and down. We have 4 different quadrants. Starting in the top right is 1, and then you go counterclockwise. 2 is to the left. 3 is bottom left, 4 is bottom right. Now, if we talk about ordered pairs, we have an x and a y value. If you guys remember, it's x comma y. Your x value is what you start with. You go left and right first, then you go up and down. And we always start from 0, 0, which is the origin. Your x and y are just directions on how to get to a point. So if you have a point that is in the first quadrant, what is the sign of x and the sign of y? Positive, positive, right? If you have a point in the second quadrant, what's the x and what's the y? X is negative, y is positive, good. If you have something in the third quadrant, what's the x and y? Both negative, good job guys. And in the fourth quadrant, it's positive, negative, because we go left and right, then up and down. Everybody see that? This is an important thing to note. It says right here that points on the coordinate axes are not assigned to a quadrant. So if I said to you, what quadrant is the green dot in? You guys would tell me what? Quadrant 3. All right. Where's the yellow dot? All right. Where's the red dot? None, right? It's not assigned to a quadrant. Everybody see that? Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the distance formula, okay? The distance formula. What I want you to remember, distance formula is always going to give you a positive value. Now, think about that, guys. Do we ever measure distance or length in negatives? No. Using our distance formula, we're going to have to take the square root. Do we ever take the square root of a negative number and get a real answer? No, we get an imaginary one. We'll talk about that later. But your distance formula, you guys are very used to this formula. A squared, B, or A, B, and C. So our A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You guys remember that, the Pythagorean theorem? All right, we use that with right triangles. Your distance formula is derived from that. Here is your distance formula. This you guys need to memorize. You have to memorize this. What you do to find the distance between 2 points is you take the two x values, subtract them, and square them. You take the two y values, subtract them, and square them. You add them together, then you take the square root. Your answer will always be positive because no matter what, when you square a negative number, what does the value become? Positive, okay? Now, some of you are going to get hung up on x2 minus x1 and y2 minus y1. If I gave you guys these 2 points, if I said point A and point B, okay? So A is negative 2, 3, and B is 5, negative 7. All right? Just say I give you those. x2 minus x1 versus x1 minus x2. If I said negative 2 minus 5, or I said 5 minus negative 2. All right, let's talk about this for a second. What is negative 2 minus 5? Negative 7. And what is negative 7 squared? 49. Okay? What is 5 minus the negative 2? Two negatives together right there become a what? So this would be 7 squared, which is what? 49. What do you notice about the two end results there? They're the same. So don't get hung up on, oh, wait, did I put the right x first? As long as you keep your x's together and your y's together. The order doesn't matter because you're going to square them. When we do slope and stuff like that, the order matters. But here, since we're squaring them, the order does not matter. Does everybody see that? Okay. Okay, we're going to do some distance problems in a second here. But this is where you would apply the distance formula. And I want you guys to see questions like this and understand what it means. It says, which of the points, P or Q, is closer to A? So do you guys understand that you are measuring the distance, right? You have a random point P, we have a random point Q, and then we have A somewhere else. And they want to know which distance is shorter, which point is closer. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do here to compare is we're going to do the distance between P and A, and then we're going to do the distance between Q and A, and we'll compare. Now, you guys are going to do this the way you want to. I understand that. But the first question on your quiz on Wednesday is going to say, find the distance between these 2 points and find the midpoint. We're going to do midpoint in a second. So I'm going to show you what I think is the best thing, the best way to approach this. If you do 100 of these problems, this becomes like second nature. Just like if you would practice for a game, or you practice an instrument, or you practice your play. You know, Terry, you go to the driving range and hit 1,000 balls, right? It's a matter of muscle memory. Your brain is a muscle. So let's get our brains trained on the distance formula so we don't have to think too much. I think you should write P and A. I have point P is 1, -2, and A is 5, 3. Now, notice how I wrote my points. Are they next to each other, or are they on top of each other? I think this is the better way to do this, guys, because you have to keep your x's together and your y's together, correct? So when you write the points on top of each other, it's really easy to see. Okay, my x's are the first column, my y's are the second. Your eyes aren't going to play tricks on you when you look back and forth between 2 points, because if you mess up the numbers here, I can't give you partial credit, because that's the whole premise of this problem. So the first thing I always do is I write down x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. Do you have to write x1 and y1, x2, y2? No. Just make sure you keep your x's together and your y's together. So some of you do it one way, some of you do it the other. My 2 x's are 1 and 5. I want somebody to write 1 minus 5 squared, and somebody else write 5 minus 1 squared. Just to show you we get the same answer. So now I'm going to take my y's, and I have -2 minus 3. What's another way I could write that? 3 minus -2, correct? Just make sure your signs are right. Now, this is where it gets a little hairy, guys, because we're not going to use calculators, so you just got to be careful. I write everything out. What's 1 minus 5? -4 squared. If you wrote it the other way, you got +4. No biggie. Now down here, -2 minus 3, I get -5 squared. If you wrote it the other way, you got +5, correct? Okay. One more step. What is -4 squared? 16, good. Plus, what's -5 squared? 25. And then I add those two numbers together, and I get the square root of 41. So the distance between points A and P is the square root of 41. We got to check, does 41 break down? Does 2 go into 41? No. 3? No. 5? No. 7? No. Could I break this down any? Nope, just stays. Questions? Let's scoot along and do the other one. Now I'm going to find the distance between Q and A. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Q is what, 8, 9? 8, 9. And A is 5, 3. Label my X column and my Y. Write out my formula. Subtract the X's and square it. Subtract the Y's and square it. Add that value together. Then take the square root. So underneath my big square root, my X is 8 minus 5. What's another way I could write that? 5 minus 8. 5 minus 8, absolutely. My y's, I can write 9 minus 3 or, there you go, 3 minus 9, either way. Because what happens when you have a negative number and you square it? It becomes positive. So 8 minus 5 is 3 squared, plus 9 minus 3 is 6 squared. What's 3 squared? 9. Good. Don't tell me 6, guys. What's 6 squared? 36. Don't tell me 12. So I'm left with the square root of 45. Now, some people, last period when we talked about this, they're like, I don't know which one's bigger, which one's smaller. Yes, you do. What number is smaller, 41 or 45? 41. So that means the square root of 41 is smaller than the square root of 45. Now, if for some reason, so you guys would answer this question now and tell me what point is closer. You would say point P is closer to point A. And you showed me that, hang on one sec. You showed me that by using the distance formula. Now, if I was just asking you what's the distance between these 2 points, and you left your answer as the square root of 45, would you get full credit? No. Why not?
Because you didn't break it down.
You got to break down. You have to break down the radicals, guys. If you can, you have to check. We talked about this when we did our prerequisites. Now, 45. Some of you can see, oh, it's 9 times 5, right? Square root of 9 is 3, so 3 root 5. Some of you still don't see that, so let's break it down. 45 divided by 2? No. Divided by 3? Yes, 15. 15 divided by 3 is 5. When you break down your number like this, anything that is a pair is a perfect, your perfect square you can take out. So do you see right here, you have a pair of 3s. So that would come on the outside of your radical, and then 5 stays inside. So your correct simplified answer to this would be 3 root 5. This question wasn't asking that. They were asking which point is closer. So you could have left it. But if all I'm asking you for is the distance, you need to make sure that your radical breaks down. All right, let's look at our examples that we have here. We're going to find the distance between all these points. What's the first thing I should do? Okay, let's label, and then what? Write your formula. Good. So distance equals, I would do this 100 times so you guys just get in the habit. X's, make sure your Y's are together. Minus sign inside the parentheses, and there's a plus sign in between the 2 letters. So my X values are negative 6 and 1. So I would really just write negative 6 minus 1 squared, or 1 minus the negative. Now I have plus 5 minus negative 1. And now we just simplify. Negative 6 minus 1 gives me negative 7 squared, plus 5 minus a negative is the same as 5 plus 1, so 6 squared. Negative 7 squared gives me 49, plus 6 squared is 36. Now guys, on your quiz, I would like to see this. 49 plus 36, work it out real quick, square root of 85. I would rather see you do this little side work right there than tell me that your answer was 75 or 65 because you just didn't add correctly in your head. Don't worry about what it looks like. Just write down, I don't care if you have to write down 11 plus 4. If you get the answer correct, that's all I care about. Now, what should I check to see if what? If 85 can be simplified. So, square root of 85, I should say. Does 2 go in? No. 3? No. 5? Yes. 5 goes into 8 one time, right, with 3 left over. Then 5 goes into 35 17 times. Can I break down 17?
No.
So then right there, guys, is your final answer. Let's look at this next one, between C and D. Okay, let's get a pattern going, a habit. I'm going to label my points, and then I'm going to write out my formula. X minus x squared plus y minus y squared. Take the square root. Okay, so my x is 10 and 0. Well, You're welcome on that one, guys. Look, I'm going to do 0 minus 10 because I'm a rebel. And then I'm going to do 3 minus 4. Does it matter what order I do? Nope, just as long as you keep your x's together and your y's. So here I have the negative 10 squared plus negative 1 squared. 3 minus 4 gives me negative 1. What is negative 10 squared? 100. What's negative 1 squared?
1.
And my answer is the distance equals the square root of 101. Does that break down?
No.
No. Okay, scoot on over.
What?
You okay? I have my x and my y. Let's write our formula out, please. I have x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. My two x values are negative 2 and 5. So we can say negative 2 minus 5 quantity squared plus my two y values are negative 3 and 7. Negative 3 minus 7 squared. Again, you could have written it the other way. You could have said 5 minus a negative 2 and 7 minus a negative 3, just as long as you keep x's together and y's together. So now as we simplify, negative 2 and negative 5 give me negative 7 squared plus negative 3 and negative 7 is negative 10 squared, correct? Okay, so negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 10 squared is 100. And I'm left with the square root of 149. And we have to check to see if that breaks down. Does 2 go into 149? No. Does 3? What's the rule for 3? Anybody remember?
They add up.
Add up the digits. Good. 9 plus 1 is 10 plus 4 is 14. That doesn't go in. 5 doesn't. 7. Okay, we're good.
But also isn't 49 and 100
Okay. We good? Woo! Sorry about that. We good with distance? All right, let's move along then, ladies and gents. Midpoint. Think about the word midpoint. Where is the midpoint of a line? In the middle. Good. You guys are going to be given 2 points, right? And you're going to find the middle, the midpoint. All right, this formula is super easy. How is this different? What's the biggest difference you see in this formula? There's addition in the middle, correct. Think about if you're trying to find the average, like the average of 2 bowling games. You add them and divide by 2, right? So that's what you do with midpoint. You take the 2 x values, add them up, divide by 2. You take the 2 y values, add them up, divide by 2, and that'll give you the middle. So let's go over these problems, and then we're done. All right, first question on your quiz on Wednesday, September the 15th. We'll say, here are 2 points. Find the distance between the 2 and find the midpoint. So you guys are going to say, okay, I'm going to find the midpoint here. Whoops. I'm going to say, all right, my midpoint is my x's. Doesn't matter what order. I just got to keep the x's together. Add them, divide by 2. Then I have to take the y's, add them, divide by 2. So what are my 2 x values in example number 1?
17.
So you'd say 17 plus 9, divide by 2. This is how you show me your work. And then you have 4 plus 3 divided by 2. What is 17 plus 9?
26.
26 divided by 2. What's 4 plus 3?
7.
7 divided by 2. And then simplify if you can. 26 divides by 2, nice and pretty.
13.
13. 7 over 2.
7.
Just leave it as 7 over 2. If you want, okay, you could write this as 13 comma 3.5, right? Or you could say 13 comma 3.5. If I were you, I would just leave it as an improper fraction simplified because you don't want to make a silly mistake and say, oh, that's 2.5. I know you guys know it's not, but you just don't want to make that silly mistake. But notice when you write the midpoint, you have an x value and a y value. It's separated by a comma. There's a comma in the middle, and it has parentheses on both sides. That's telling me it's a point. That's all part of your answer. If you don't have it written as a point, I'm going to take some points off. Questions? All right, let's look at this last one. I have an x value, and I have a y value. All right, midpoint. Well, remind yourself what the midpoint formula is. I take my x's, I add them up, and I divide by 2. I take my y's, I add them up, divide by 2. Remember, distance, you're subtracting the x and y values. In midpoint, you're adding them. So I have -4 plus 5. Another way you could have written that is 5 plus -4, or 5 minus 4, divided by 2. And then I have 6 plus -1. Now, some of you are going to say, can I just write 6 minus 1? Sure. I just like to write it with the plus sign in the middle. So I remind myself, oh, okay, that's right. I did add them. I don't, sometimes if we miss a sign, we get a little confused. But what is -4 plus 5?
1.
So I have 1 over 2. And what's 6 plus -1?
5.
So 5 over 2. I would leave it just like that. The only time I want your fraction simplified is if you get something like 12 over 8. Can I reduce that fraction? Yes, I would reduce this. I divide top and bottom by 4. I would reduce it, to 3 over 2. But if it's an improper fraction that is as low as possible, I would just leave it just like that. Questions? Okay, I'm going to keep this video running because I want you guys to go into WebAssign, and I'm going to do it here in a second with you, but I'm just going to walk you through it verbally. You guys will find your assignment, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. Now, once you find your assignment, you are not inputting anything into WebAssign itself. You're merely using it like you would a textbook page. I want you to screenshot your questions, put it into Notability, and show me all your work. Does everyone understand that? You'll then submit your PDF as your homework. Now, WebAssign, for those of you who have not used WebAssign before, it creates different problems for everybody. Same concepts, but your problems will be different. So I have a roster of who is in WebAssign, so you can't take someone else's and submit that and then tell me that that was yours, because I can go in and see your exact problem. So just do your own work. Everybody with me? Okay.